Hey everyone. In today's episode, I'm going to discuss Melbourne Suburbs set to gentrify. It's a good topic to discuss with everyone because I think a lot of people get this mixed up. A lot of people think just because the price is going up, it means it's going to gentrify. It doesn't. So in today's episode, I'll get into a few things. First things first, the definitions. Secondly, rejuvenation versus gentrification. And then finally, the suburbs themselves. So really, look, the definition of gentrification is where the demographics of an urban area are changed or changing from a lower socioeconomic demographic to a more affluent demographic. This generally brings top quality housing, employment, and business to the location. Gentrification also has the effect of displacing current inhabitants to other less advantageous locations. So, look, that's really what gentrification is. It's mainly around demographics of an area. It's not necessarily fascia, because fascia has to do with rejuvenation. So, rejuvenation is where the character of the neighborhood changes from a derelict old estate to a more original or new estate. This is generally characterized by the fascia of the suburb. So that's that's your key real, should I say, distinguishment or key difference between gentrification and rejuvenation. They're not the same thing. So with that, a lot of people do get quite a few things wrong. So a lot of people think they're the same thing. They're not. So for something somewhere to gentrify, you need these things to happen. So first things first, it needs to be close by to a strong demographic area. A suburb can't gentrify without it having an area close by or suburb close by that has a significantly stronger income demographic. So generally speaking, gentrification will usually happen with the spillover effect. So you might have somewhere, for example, a good example in Sydney would be somewhere like Marrickville. That's completely gentrified now. I mean, late 90s, early 2000s, not many people wanted to live there, but now it's quite popular. And what happened was your wealthier people kind of from Stanmore and more Newtown started to move into Marrickville. They started to sell off some of the public housing. Suburb completely changed up. So that's a good example. Another thing is must have short present and future supply long term. So what that means is supply can't continue to increase because affluent people will not move into the area. It will be mostly first home buyers if supply increases too much. Now, I'd put an exclamation point if it's an infill area, which are very rare. There was one in Haberfield sold earlier this year, which is the first I've seen in inner Sydney for probably 5 years or so. So it can happen in that circumstance, but it's very rare. Must be near affluent employment hubs or within reasonable commutable distance to. So a lot of people will say, oh, this area is going to gentrify because this and the other. They'll say, oh, it's going to gentrify because it's on a train line. It can gentrify if it's on a major train line, and it has the right kind of, should I say, dynamics to it. It can in that circumstance. But it has to be near affluent employment hubs. And what that is it's not just like your general warehouses or anything like that. I mean, I'd say wealthier jobs, so particularly white-collar jobs, state government administration jobs, those sorts of things. Trades are fine as long as the trades are well established. That's probably the main thing. So that's another thing people get wrong. And also, it must be within a well-diversified, wealthy, larger city. So you get people saying there's a suburb of Bendigo, Ballarat that will gentrify. There's people that will say this one in Albury or Wodonga will gentrify, and I have to tell them no, that will not work because the city's not diversified enough and it's not wealthy enough, number two. So, I mean, you really have to have a very good long-term economy for that to be the case, because if you don't, it's very hard to actually even justify how it can gentrify. So those are rules that people generally get wrong. And the main difference between gentrification and rejuvenation is gentrification is the changing demographics of the suburb. Rejuvenation is the changing fascia of the suburb. They're not the same thing. Generally, a suburb will go through rejuvenation first before it goes through gentrification. So don't get the two mixed up. Let's get into some suburbs now. So I've previously been saying under 800K, but this I don't think really exists anymore. Well, it kind of does, but it's not something that's rentable. Like, I could probably still say under 800K, but I mean, really for something livable and rentable, it is probably under 850. And that suburb is Braybrook. So I mention it a lot, and I'm going to continue to mention it because I stick with what works, as everyone knows. So Braybrook's about 10 to 11 Ks west of Melbourne CBD. It's on the western boundary of the Maribyrnong Council region. It is right next to West Footscray and Sunshine, between the two suburbs. It looks like this, so it's not very far away from the city. As you can see, the Braybrook Hotel and the city in the background. So that would be along Ballarat Road, I'm pretty sure. And yeah, it's a very well located suburb. Look, Braybrook a long time ago was known, not a long time ago, maybe 15, 20 years ago, was known as the Bronx of Melbourne. So it did have a large proportion of public housing there, a very, very large proportion of public housing there. But Braybrook's a part of a thing called the Braybrook Regeneration Project, as you can see here. So what this is it's a state government project where they're selling off a lot of the land and improving all the facilities and features of the suburb. Now that's towards its final stages. It's nearly actually complete. And if you drive through the suburb, you'll see all the new townhouses going up, all new homes going up. There's homes that are selling for above 1.5 million here now, and that would have been unheard of years and years ago. Believe it or not, Braybrook has done around 9.9% long-term capital growth. You can check that in the Aussie Home Loans 25-year report, and you can go and do plenty of actual suburb data research yourself if you want to. And you're still picking this up livable for sub 850, and you could probably get under sub 800 if you don't mind doing a little bit of work, which is good. The suburb itself, I'd say too, pretty good. The demographics have increased a lot. Look, there was about 64 or so % of public housing there in the early 2000s and late 90s, and before that, that number's about 18 or 19% now. And of that public housing, about 10% of it is aged public housing. So it's your old red brick, attached dwellings, and it just kind of feels like a retirement village when you go there. You don't see any of the real junky, derelict kind of people around there. It's mostly just old, like war vets, widows, those sorts of people. So it just feels like an old retirement village, those locations in Braybrook. So you really do need to know where you're buying. But what's happening here as well is that they're selling more and more of it off. I know a few of the actual agencies out this way. And what they're doing is they're continuing to win contracts, so state government contracts, and sell these blocks of land off. And often what will happen is you get a big house built there or a few townhouses. So it's just going to gentrify further, really. Like, this is a government-backed gentrification. So, I mean, good suburb that in Braybrook. That's definitely for under 850. Let's get into under 900, and it's an interesting one because it's probably under 850 as well, but I've said under 900 because I've included two suburbs in this, and those suburbs are Heidelberg Heights and Heidelberg West. Now, a lot of people in Melbourne will know both of these suburbs and have a lot of stigma about them, and don't get me wrong, it's probably warranted, particularly in Heidelberg West in some parts of it. Now, in saying that though, like, they are probably the rarest commodities in terms of what you can pick up in the suburb, for what you get and the location and where it is as well. Now, they're very rare, and I did say in a previous episode there are things that aren't good about certain suburbs, and high crime is one. So these are the two that probably buck that trend, that you can still buy in and do perfectly well. And it's simply because the crime level has fallen off a cliff, and it's going to fall even more, don't get me wrong. It's not going to be anywhere near as bad as it once was, but it is definitely one where, I mean, there are certain elements to it, but Heidelberg Heights and Heidelberg West are possibly the most likely suburbs to gentrify significantly. And the reason for that is, look, a lot of public housing has been sold off in the mid-2000s to 2010s. A lot of that is being stock held by developers at the moment, which they are going to develop very soon. You've got things like this. This is on Tarracan Street. This is actually, funny enough, a public housing development, but it's not one where you get, I'd say, dodgy people around it. It's actually fairly good around here. It's not that bad. The bad part of Heidelberg's kind of in the northwestern pocket. It's around certain areas there. So that's an area you'd probably avoid in Heidelberg West. But Heidelberg Heights and Heidelberg West, especially Heidelberg Heights, is pretty good, and Heidelberg West south of Southern Road is pretty good as well. The new development there is it's actually affordable and social housing, but the element of social housing that's in there is almost entirely aged people and people from disadvantaged backgrounds, and they're actually pretty good. And the affordable housing, a lot of them actually work at the local hospital. That's literally the repatriation hospital and the other hospital that's just down the road, in Ivanhoe, which is literally straight across the main road there. So I mean, there's a lot of affordable people that are nurses and paramedics that actually live in this housing here. So they're perfectly fine people, and you'll see what I mean if you drive through the suburb. But that's not only the thing, but they've actually got in the north of even Heidelberg West a master plan of an employment hub. So this is what it kind of looks like. This is Banyule Council. You can search it up on the internet. So this is basically a Heidelberg Business Park, West Business Park master plan. You'll see things like this improve. And to give everyone an idea, Heidelberg West and Heidelberg Heights are like 800 to 900 grand. The southern part is really like 900 to 950, to be straight honest with people, especially Heidelberg West and some good parts of Heidelberg Heights. But let's just call it under 900 for the sake of this video, because you can still scrap them sometimes. Well, to be straight, the better streets really will be closer to 950, because that's just the gross land value is incredible. And the thing about these suburbs is they neighbour Ivanhoe, Belfield, and Ivanhoe East. So these are very much so, particularly Ivanhoe and Ivanhoe East, upper middle class suburbs. I had a client who bought right in the southern part of Heidelberg West recently, and he did. Oh man, I thought it was a very good deal because the gross land value is incredible. And I kid you not, it's like 600 or 700 meters away from Ivanhoe, between the two hospitals there. And there was a house like 600-700 meters away for $2.5 million. And he bought it for in the 950s, right? And I mean, like, where are you going to find that somewhere in somewhere else? Like, these are very unique kind of suburbs that you won't find stuff like this very often. And you may, once these go, and they will go, I can tell you that right now, despite what everyone's stigma about them, because if you want to reference me on how that's going to happen, just look at Richmond. Richmond has done like 9.8% long-term. Yes, it took a little while to gentrify, probably until the 60s, 70s to start to gentrify. And yes, there's still derelict parts of it, don't get me wrong. But since then, it's done like 9.8% capital growth. And I mean, it still has, I cannot stand Richmond. It's got dirty, junky kind of people everywhere. Syringes you see in parks. I mean, you'd have to probably disinfect a whole seat before sitting on it in some parts of Richmond, but it still does 9.8% long term. So, I mean, it's still probably a top 10 suburb in the country to buy in. And I'll tell you, Heidelberg West and Heidelberg Heights are going to be those sorts of suburbs in the future. To neighbours places like Ivanhoe and Ivanhoe East, where you get properties selling for 2.5-3 million plus, it's very rare. So they're absolute commodity. They're a complete anomaly in the market. So those are suburbs that are definitely set to gentrify in Melbourne. Let's get into under $1 million. And I mentioned this suburb in the past, but I'll mention it again. And that suburb is Footscray. So Footscray lies pretty much 6 to 7 k's directly west of Melbourne CBD. It is very similar to kind of somewhere like Marrickville or Newtown. Probably in Sydney, it looks like this. This is just via the Footscray market and the tram running through the middle of it. Quite a diverse area, a lot of Vietnamese, Chinese people, even people from mixed backgrounds as well there. I mean, don't get me wrong, there are still parts of Footscray I would say are pretty, I'd say, derelict and pretty dirty, and you probably don't feel the best in. But the suburb, again, has done like 9.6 to 9.7% long term, and it lies literally within about a 10 to 15 minute train or drive from the city, depending on where you are in the suburb. So it's very, very close to Melbourne CBD. Look, it's already in the process, and you'll see this in the future suburbs I just give you, but it's already in the process of going from, I'd probably say, a middle working class suburb to an upper middle class working class suburb, should I say. So it's already happening in that. You're getting houses in Footscray that are selling for well over $2 million today. And it's one of the most important neighbourhoods, I'd say, in Melbourne, and it's been named by Time magazine as one of the coolest neighbourhoods in the world. I think it ranked like in the top 20 or something like that. I think it might have even been number 6 or something like that. It was known as one of things like that. So this is, you can see the photo here, just that's Footscray Market. That's a centre. Footscray Market isn't a particular, should I say, just centre itself. There is a market in Footscray, specific market where they kind of, where when people say close to the market, they're talking about sort of where all the shops are in the market centre for Footscray. The thing about Footscray as well is that because of where it is, it's kind of one of the most important suburbs of Melbourne as well in terms of our planning and also, should I say, future perspective of Melbourne's west, because the west is probably the fastest growing area in the country, I'd say, in terms of housing and all that kind of thing. So Footscray, the main Footscray station is where all the express trains go through. All the area around it's in basically like a high activity zone and urban growth zone. So you see already massive apartments being built there, huge high rises. I mean, not only huge high rises, let's say, but it's also you've got the hospitals there, you've got the uni there. I mean, you've got pretty much the avenue straight to the west, so towards both Sunbury and Melton there as well. It also goes past, goes towards Geelong if you go sort of to the south from there as well on the trains. So, I mean, Footscray is really, it's one of those suburbs where, I mean, it's going to gentrify further in the future. It's just positioned incredibly. If you think about, for example, inner parts of the inner east, so it's probably, I wouldn't say it's equivalent, but if you looked at somewhere like Windsor or Prahran and areas like that, they're probably a similar distance away from the CBD. They're just 50 years ahead of Footscray. And I mean, that's what Footscray is going to be like in the coming years. So, and it's still going to perform like the same as it's done all the time. It's incredible you pick it up for under $1 million. The rents are going quite substantially up here. So you're getting places that will rent for in the 700s to mid 700s now that are well maintained. So that's Footscray, definitely one that's set to gentrify further, and still picking up for about $950,000, which is really good. Let's get in at under 1.2 million. And it's funny to say gentrifying, but what I mean by these suburbs is it's not simply gentrifying, it's gentrifying further and changing from probably a middle-class suburb to a wealthy suburb. And that suburb for under $1.2 million is Newport in Melbourne's inner west as well. So as you can see in this photo, Newport really it's kind of a harbour side / entrance to the Maribyrnong / Yarra rivers. You can see Westgate Bridge from there and some of the docks straight across the harbour from there as well in Port Melbourne. Really, Newport is, at the moment, I'll call Newport probably a middle-class suburb. It probably is a middle-class suburb, but it's going to be an upper middle-class suburb 100% in the next probably 10 or so years. It's going to gentrify even further, become a very, very, very good neighbourhood, and it's got everything right to do that there. So just to give you an idea at the moment, it's got some of Melbourne's best demographics. So if you just look at this extract from, this is Census 2021, median weekly household income, $26.57 a week. Median monthly mortgage repayments, $25.07. So to give everyone an idea, the market's probably moved about 5 to 10% since 2021. But incomes, if you just do it via, should I say, CPI, because we've had higher CPI since 2021, it's probably up 15 to 20%. So the ratio's got even better. And this ratio, they generally say your monthly mortgage repayment should be no more than 30% gross. This on this graph is about 24%. It's probably 22 or 23 if you're taking it where it would be today. So Newport has, even the resident population of Newport can easily afford to push up prices here because they have the necessary income demographics to do so. So, I mean, for people that want to debate on that, those are just the numbers behind Newport. And it is a suburb that is surrounded by a much more expensive suburb in Williamstown, and it is also harbourfront. So Newport itself is going to be one of these suburbs where you'll have, first of all, wealthier people moving, even to the western part of Newport. I mean, the far west Newport Lakes side of it. That part's even getting sales of like $2 million now. But it's going to continue. And, I mean, to have the harbourfront as well is only going to push the suburb up further. There are parts on the parkland and parts of the Strand of Newport that do sell for $4-5+ million, and that's set to continue. So it's a unique suburb in that, and it's one that you're going to definitely see become an upper middle class suburb probably in the next 10 or so years. And you're still picking it up for about $1.2 or so million in the right pocket. So it's a very good deal in that. That is Newport for under $1.2 million. The top end I'm going to do in terms of gentrification is 1.5 million. And it's not really, it is gentrification still, but it's further. This part, I'm going from an upper middle class suburb to a wealthy suburb. And the reason for that is because it is still changing the suburb, don't get me wrong, but it's just becoming much more wealthy. That's all it is. And for under 1.5 million, I've got Balaclava as that suburb. So for those that don't really know Balaclava, it's basically right next to St Kilda East. It is predominantly in a very well tightly held Jewish Orthodox area of Melbourne. Balaclava is known for being a very much so Jewish Orthodox area. There is obviously a Shiva College there, which is known as one of the best Jewish schools in the country. A lot of Jewish people, because they're quite religious, they will, on certain days of every month, they will not use any technology and they will literally walk to their areas of worship. They'll turn everything off. They won't use any technology. That's just what they do. So, I mean, my sister played with a very strict Orthodox Jewish person, and I remember when she had to play soccer in a far away place, they would literally, I kid you not, bring a tent and they would camp out in the nearest campsite after the game. They would use no technology whatsoever. It's just what they did. So really, if you just want to look where Balaclava is as well, it's tightly held, as I said, and it's extremely cheap in an expensive pocket. So you'll see, obviously, there you've got, surrounding suburbs like Elwood, you've got obviously St Kilda East, Caulfield nearby, Elstonwick, all much more expensive suburbs. Yes, you can say St Kilda is probably 1.7. Balaclava is about 1.45 at the moment. I've even picked up stuff closer to the sort of 2 mark, but anyway, I'm saying 1.5 because there's still very good dwellings under 1.5. But the thing about Balaclava is as well, the reason I really like it. Yes, St Kilda's cheaper, but the right pockets of St Kilda, which are near Balaclava, are quite expensive. So it's cheap in that way, but the population that own there are very much so tightly holding sort of people. The Jewish people don't generally sell assets. So Balaclava's had years where they've had 100% clearance rate, for example. Barely anything on the market, everything sells. And even if the market's hot and they price it ridiculously, it still sells. So it's one of those suburbs where it's going to become very much so a wealthy suburb. It's got everything going for it. It's very tightly held. There's no stock on market. It's surrounded by wealthy suburbs. So, I mean, for people wanting to buy around the 1.5 or slightly less, I can't think of a better option than Balaclava. So that's my pick, my last pick, because I'm not going to go into more expensive than 1.5 million because it's just ridiculous to talk about gentrification and that. But this is set to become a very wealthy suburb probably in the next 10 or so years. That is Balaclava. So look, that's pretty much my episode, but I thank everyone for watching this, and please subscribe to my channel. But if you're someone who's interested about getting in the market and you're serious about it, please reach out via www.compoundinvest.com.au/inquire. Look, what happens here is it's a free 30-minute phone call. So I give you a phone call. In the booking, you book a time, a half an hour time slot, and it goes into both my and your calendars. We have a phone call. You give me basically what you want to do and what you want to achieve. I'll give you some options then, and we'll formulate a strategy from there. And now, look, if you're someone who, let's say, might be sitting on the fence for the next 3 or 6 months, sitting on the fence now, or you might be someone who has their reservations about buyer's agents, look, I completely understand that because it's full of cowboys. But you'll understand how much I care about people when you hear me speak and how much passion I put into it. I mean, I'm not someone who says, I'll do a good job for you, then goes and buys you something in a new estate or sells you an off-the-plan place. I don't do that. I buy existing only detached houses. It's just what I buy. So for people, again, who are looking to do something serious, or you're looking to get in the market, www.compoundinvest.com.au. Look, /inquire, sorry. I really appreciate you all reaching out to me, and I look forward to hearing from you and seeing you in the next episode. Thanks, guys.